They thought they could suppress this forever, a civilization that gave the world mathematics, medicine, philosophy, and spirituality, a land that stood unbroken for 5,000 years, now rising again. And the world? Terrified. Why does the West tremble at India's success? Why do they flood their media with negativity every time this nation takes a step forward? What are they so desperate to hide? The answer will shake you. For too long, India's children have been fed lies. Lies that painted their motherland as broken. Lies that made them ashamed of their own heritage. They showed a single slum movie and declared it the definition of an entire civilization. They chose poverty over prosperity, filth over philosophy, backwardness over brilliance. But the sleeping giant has awakened. While the world was busy mocking India, do they know what was actually happening? Indian entrepreneurs were building empires across the globe. 800 companies in Britain, the former colonizer, now employing 110,000 of their citizens. Estimates vary by study and year, but recent surveys show Indian firms have created hundreds of thousands of U.S. jobs. Not stealing jobs, creating them, giving them. This is the power of India. Even after centuries of looting, even after being left with nothing, Indians went to foreign lands and became job providers, not job seekers. Let that sink in. They obsess over India's problems while hiding their own shame. They scream about safety in India. They manufacture outrage. They weaponize isolated incidents to paint an entire nation. Want the uncomfortable truth? India's rates of such crimes are significantly lower than Western nations when properly analyzed. But do their media channels broadcast that? Never, because truth doesn't serve their agenda. And here's what they'll never tell their people. Their own citizens, tourists from the so-called developed world, are the primary predators exploiting children in poor nations. UN and specialist reports document cases where foreign tourists, including some from high-income countries, are disproportionately involved in sexual exploitation in certain destinations. Not rumors, documented facts. Where are the Hollywood movies about that? Where's the global outrage? Silence, deafening silence. Because the narrative must be controlled. India must be shown as the problem, never the solution, never the victim of their historical crimes. Let's speak truth. For thousands of years, India was the world's wealthiest civilization. The golden bird, 23% of global GDP. Every invader came for India's wealth. Every colonizer came to plunder. And plunder they did. Around $45 trillion extracted from India during British rule alone. 45 trillion. Famines engineered. Industries destroyed. Knowledge systems erased. Generations enslaved. Yet India survived. 78 years ago, a nation emerged from the ashes of colonization. Broken but unbowed. Poor but proud. And what did it choose? Democracy, not dictatorship, not revenge. Democracy. Because that's who Indians are. Believers in elevation, not degradation. And they've delivered miracles. Presidents from communities they called untouchable. Female prime ministers when Western nations hadn't even imagined it. Leaders from so-called lower castes governing the entire nation. This is the India they don't want you to see. This is the India that shatters their narrative of oppression. Watch how the civilized world operates. Import poor workers, exploit their labor, house them in terrible conditions, pay them just enough, then discard them when convenient. No citizenship, no dignity, pure exploitation disguised as opportunity. Meanwhile, India, still rebuilding from centuries of theft, operates on dharma, on righteousness, on permanent inclusion. They lecture India about sanitation. Those same nations whose citizens suffer from documented disorders and addictions they're too ashamed to address. India openly builds millions of toilets and speaks honestly about challenges. They hide behind closed doors and pretend problems don't exist. The difference is clear. India has the courage of self-reflection. They have the cowardice of self-deception. Indian citizens criticize their government fiercely because democracy empowers them to demand better. Not because India is failing, because Indians refuse to accept anything less than greatness. That's the spirit of this nation. Never satisfied, always striving, eternally pushing forward. Here's what real power looks like. Nuclear weapons? India has them. Fourth strongest military on Earth? That's India. But unlike others, India doesn't invade, doesn't colonize, doesn't bomb nations for oil or impose puppet governments for profit. India's strength is rooted in dharma, not domination. The Indian Space Research Organization launches satellites at revolutionary prices, helping poor nations achieve their dreams, saving wealthy nations money, not through weapons dealing, not through resource wars, through knowledge, through service, through excellence. Indian temples and gurdwaras feed millions globally, asking nothing in return. No forced conversions, no hidden agendas, just compassion, just humanity, just dharma in action. An environment? Indians produce far less waste per person than Americans or Europeans, lower greenhouse emissions than the US and China. Yet India still pushes harder for sustainability because that's the dharmic way, leaving Earth better than we found it. This is what they fear most. India's rise is inevitable, and it threatens nothing except their false superiority. And after everything, after centuries of invasion, exploitation, and colonization, Indians still smile genuinely, still welcome even their former oppressors, still choose forgiveness over hatred, still believe in shared prosperity over zero-sum games. This isn't weakness. This is the ultimate strength. Only a truly confident civilization can forgive those who wronged it. Only a truly powerful nation can rise without crushing others beneath it. So hear this clearly. India will make mistakes on its journey. It will stumble while learning. It will face challenges while growing. But nothing will stop this civilization's return to its rightful place. The world spent centuries trying to break India. They failed. They spent decades trying to suppress India's truth. They're failing. They'll spend the coming years trying to slow India's rise. They will fail. Because this isn't just a nation. This is a civilization. 5,000 years of unbroken culture, 78 years of democratic resilience, and a future that belongs to India's 1.4 billion children who refuse to be defined by anyone else's narrative. The negative headlines, they're proof of fear. The biased documentaries, evidence of desperation. The constant criticism, symptoms of their anxiety. They know what's coming. They know the 21st century belongs to India. They know that a nation rooted in dharma, powered by democracy and driven by destiny, cannot be stopped. Every Indian watching this, remember, your ancestors survived everything. Invasions, famines, colonization, partition, and from those ashes, they built the world's largest democracy. Now it's your turn, your time, your responsibility. They wrote India's obituary 1,000 times. Each time the nation rose stronger. They said India would starve without them. It became the world's food basket. They said Indians would never innovate. They reached Mars on the first attempt. They said democracy wouldn't work there. It became the largest democracy on Earth. So here's the real question. While they keep predicting India's downfall, who's going to tell them that the future they fear has already begun? India isn't asking for validation anymore. India is simply becoming inevitable.